So yesterday I made a video talking about Edge of Fate, and I talked about how this is with the expansion that ruined Destiny and all that stuff. And a lot of the comments that I got on that video were talking about the portal and how much they hate it and how they won't play Destiny again until it's removed. So I wanted to talk about the portal specifically today because while yesterday I did talk about it quite a bit in that video, a lot of the information that I was referencing was old because of the time that Edge of Fate actually released, and I was talking purely more about Edge of Fate in and of itself than I was the portal as a whole. So here's the thing. Bungie understands obviously that they can't just press a button and remove the portal from the game. Unfortunately, that's not really something that they can do. If Bungie could have it their way at this point with how negative and how honestly violently hated the portal has been literally since it was put into the game, they would probably just roll the game back to heresy and start over and try to design something new, because clearly this was a failed system that no one likes. Again, I've seen comments of people saying they won't touch the game until the portal is removed again, and I mean, I can't really blame people for having that opinion. But let's talk about what Bungie actually is going to have to do if they want to remove the portal from the game. So when Bungie introduced the portal in the first place, they moved a ton of activities around into the portal. They have a playlist for pretty much everything in the portal. You got your solo ops stuff, which is basically glorified lost sectors. You've got your fire team ops, which is where strikes are and battlegrounds and all that stuff. You've got the Arena Ops playlist, which was only added in Renegades, so this wasn't even there in Edge of Fate. But basically, what this is you have all your 6-man activities there. You got Catch Crash from Season of the Plunder, you got Nightmare Containment from Season of Haunted, and you've got Astro Alignment from Season of the Lost. Pinnacle Ops is where all of the exotic missions, and I guess you can call them dungeon layers, are. Which, side note, dungeon layers was an awful idea, but more on that later. Also, the Coil and Contest of Elders are in here. There might be others that I'm missing, but those are just the ones that I know for sure are in there. And then, of course, you've got Crucible. So here's the thing. When Bungie released the portal, obviously they planned on simplifying the game and making it easier for people to find where they want to go. The issue is this, quite frankly, just removed the entire identity and the soul of Destiny and kind of turned it into more of like modern game, incredibly formulaic approach to UIs. And here's the thing. This is just speaking me personally. I know there's a lot of people who just don't want it in the game at all, but I think there is a way the portal can work. It just can't be in the way that it is right now, and you cannot require players to have to use it in order to level. You can't have anything like that. Like, it has to be completely optional, and it has to be a way for people to go in and select things easier, because that is the one thing that the portal does accomplish, in my opinion. Like, you do have the ability to just go in and find a strike without having to go to the planet that it's on, and things like that are kind of nice. But ultimately, at the end of the day, Bungie is going to have to move the game back to just using the orbit screen. Like, it's not going to work. Again, people do not want to see this when they log into the game. That's the problem. And I genuinely don't think any amount of TLC or anything like that is going to change that. Like, if people understand that the portal is the first thing that they see when they log into the game, they're going to be negative about it, and that's just the reality that I've seen. And just for the record, I'm not saying I blame anyone who feels that way about the portal. I think with the way that Edge of Fate launched, it's absolutely justifiable. And honestly, even now, just having to play the portal activities does feel like it just sucks all of the life out of Destiny. But in order for me to highlight the one actual good thing that did come out of the portal, it's that a lot of the Sunset content has returned to the game as a result. And obviously, I'm not talking about the campaigns and the raids and stuff like that. I'm talking about the seasonal content that was trashed after the season ended, or rather at the end of the year. So again, you've got stuff like the Coil, you've got Contest of Elders, you've got Catch Crash and Nightmare Containment and Astral Alignment. You've got the Savathun Spire activity. And I genuinely think that these are positives for the game. However, there are a couple glaring issues with the fact that they are in the game in the first place. And the first is none of them have their loot. So while yes, the Coil is in the game, you're just going to receive generic portal loot from running it. It's not like it has the actual loot that came from Season of the Wish when it was released. And obviously this is the case with all of these. You're not going to be getting haunted weapons when you run Nightmare Containment right now. And that's an issue with the portal that I think Bungie just never was able to flesh out. And honestly, if they had been able to flesh that out, maybe people would have viewed the portal in a little bit of a different light. You know, if you were able to actually get the rewards that were tied to that activity tiered in the first place, updated for the new system, then maybe people wouldn't have had such a bitter attitude about it. But again, you basically are just turning the entire game into the same generic grind for the same generic loot, and that's never and was never going to work. In order for the portal to work, the undertaking that it would take from Bungie is honestly astronomical because every single activity basically in the entire portal, which is a ton by the way, would all need their own unique loot in order for it to really work and for people to be happy with it, I feel like. And I'm not trying to defend Bungie when I say that. I'm just trying to detail what I think it would genuinely take for the portal to ever have been a success. And again, the main reason why I want to say all of this is because if Bungie were to just completely axe the portal from the game, they would have to find a place to put all of this content that they've brought back over the years that's supposed to go inside of the portal. Like all of these activities, they need to be still in the game, obviously, or that's just going to create another issue. And then there's the whole issue of tiered loot. Tiered loot and the portal basically were constructed for each other, obviously. Like when you complete any activity in the portal, you're getting a drop or drops based on a number of factors like what level you already are and how many modifiers you had on and stuff like that. It's going to change whether or not you're able to get tier 5 or tier 4 or whatever tier. And obviously, if you're already leveled, then that creates a situation where you're just getting constantly showered in tier 5s. And then this entire system basically has just created 4 more tiers of blues. Like before, you just got a legendary weapon, and that was kind of the end of it, and now you have 4 tiers of blues. Because once you're in a certain threshold, you're just going to be dismantling anything that isn't tier 5 the second you get it, which, by the way, is very little. And the reason I'm bringing that up, again, is because all of this is so baked into the Portal's DNA that removing any part of it would be a huge undertaking, I'm sure, for Bungie. Like all of the systems that came with Edge of Fate were designed to work together, and trying to remove any of them, I imagine, is probably not easy, which is why Bungie has doubled down on the tiered loot system and the portal so much in the first place. And again, we're getting all of the raid and what dungeon weapons in the game updated to have tiered loot as of the June update, as well as all exotic armor getting tiered. So, I mean, I'm not necessarily saying that the portal is here to stay, but I am saying that I would be really surprised if Bungie were willing to completely listen to feedback on it and remove it completely. They might do something to try to make it more appealing for players, but I just don't see them completely removing it if they're doubling down on the tiered loot system in the first place. And I know that's the unfortunate part that people don't want to hear. I really do. Like, trust me, I hear what you're saying. I personally prefer the orbit screen as well. I don't want, the portal to exist. And if it's going to exist, it's got to be unforced. Like, you've got to give people the option to choose the orbit screen. And frankly, I feel like you need to force it back into being like the first thing you see when you log into the game. I don't think people want to see the portal screen anymore. And another thing I will say is I think the seasonal hub feature that Bungie added in Renegades is really good. It's kind of baked into the portal, but I'm sure it could exist outside of the portal if they were to remove it, which again, I don't really think they will, but I do think that system is good. And obviously the alert system that they released is a step in the right direction of getting the game back to having like a weekly ritual type of situation and a reason to log in each week and do these activities. Obviously, we're not all the way there yet, and it's still going to need a lot of work in order to get to a state where I think players are happy with it. But just that it exists in the first place is a good thing. And I mean, obviously, I'm just going to say this. I understand that there's going to be negativity associated with anything that feels like it's incomplete in a game that's 10 years old, basically, at this point. And that's ultimately the problem with everything that released alongside Edge of Fate. It feels like we've basically been beta testing a game this entire year. Like Heresy was, at least back at that point, we had a finished product that felt complete. It felt like all of the systems had had years to develop and, become what they are. And we weren't testing a game at that point. Obviously, people weren't thrilled with it for a lot of reasons, but at least things felt polished and complete. And the past year has not been that, and that's ultimately the biggest problem with the portal and all of the other systems that were released alongside Edge of Fate that are all tightly baked together. So no doubt it'll be a huge undertaking for Bungie to try to get this situation sorted, get the portal into a state where people either like it or again just completely remove it. Like, we don't know what Bungie's going to do in the next expansion yet, but I mean, if you see the reception to the portal right now, and I know, like I said before, I know Bungie has doubled down on it, which is why I don't feel like they're going to remove it. But I mean, obviously, if they're going to listen to the community and try to win back goodwill, it's definitely something they're just going to have to do at some point. I know they're doubling down on it right now, obviously with the tiered loot and stuff, with all the raids and dungeons being updated and exotic armor coming to the tiered system. I don't know. Like, it just feels like something where Bungie is gonna have to eventually just admit their L. Like, obviously, I know they kind of have in a lot of ways, but just understand that there's no way that it's gonna work. Like, I just genuinely think that if a situation is bad enough to where the entire community basically does not like its existence, then it's probably just time to try to figure out something else. And the reality is, like, we're getting next to no communication from Bungie, so we don't know what's going on with these internal situations right now. We don't know whether or not Bungie is at talks of removing the portal. We don't know if that's something that could be coming in the next major expansion, which we don't know when that's coming either. So, you know, it's all speculation, but I'm just talking in this video about the portal specifically and whether or not I think Bungie could remove it from the game, and I just don't see it really happening in the immediate future. If Destiny, you know, is still going, which, I mean, that's a topic right there. But I'm making this video with the assumption that Destiny is still going to exist in 6 months to a year. So, you know, maybe at that point we could start to see something talked about with the portal being removed from the game or whatever. I don't know. We'll see. Oh yeah, and one more thing, because I started to circle back to this. The dungeon layer thing that they tried with the portal is genuinely one of the worst things I've ever seen Bungie attempt, and it landed so poorly that I'm honestly surprised that it ever passed the meeting room, which I feel pretty similarly with a lot of the things with Edge of Fate. But it really just highlights everything wrong with the portal and is one of the most tone-deaf things that Bungie has ever done, because you have all of these people complaining about not being able to play their favorite raids and dungeons and get rewarded for it, and then you release basically like a very small handful of encounters that are not fun to play in the slightest, because you have to go through the traversal periods just to get to the boss in each one. And even when you do complete it, which you have to complete with many, many modifiers active just for it to give you any reward whatsoever, you still aren't directly getting dungeon loot from it. Obviously, you can make it so you get old and outdated dungeon loot, but I mean, that doesn't really solve the problem at all, because you can still go and play the old version of the dungeon just fine. It's just the fact that it doesn't give loot. So this accomplished literally nothing. They didn't update the loot for it, and I know, again, in June they are updating all raids and dungeons in the game to have tiered loot, but it was just the fact that they ever did that in the first place that made the portal seem almost worse than it had been. Like, I think that was genuinely one of the more insulting things that Bungie has ever done. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I just had to get that little rant out of my system at the end of the video. I'll catch you guys next time. Leave a like, subscribe, and comment if you enjoyed it. Peace.